Hernán Cortés was a conquistador, is the big word for it, the Spanish word, which just means conqueror. But he was also a very complicated man. He was a military-ish figure who began essentially as a kind of lawyer, a functionary in colonial government. He went to Cuba and Hispaniola, which is the island housing, I believe today, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and went there as just an administrator, essentially, a notary. He was sitting there doing paperwork. But the whole time, and he was there for several years, the whole time he was ambitious. He had other things he wanted to do, other things he wanted to accomplish. And one of them was going over and looking at Mexico and seeing what he could get from there. Now, he is coming along roughly a generation or so after Columbus. So the Spanish imprint on the so-called New World was already fairly well established, but just really on the periphery. And for the most part, they had the Spanish explorers had not come upon what they were really looking for. Columbus famously was looking for India, and he failed wildly in that, but stumbled across the Americas. But one thing that he was always trying to sell is the idea that there is gold to be found in the Americas, and we have to go get it. But he was never able to do that. His reports back to the king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, were all about the natural resources that could be exploited, both vegetative and human. Resources for industrial production and building ships and stuff like that. But he never really found gold. But that hunger was there, and that dream of the streets paved with gold, El Dorado, the idea that gold is out there in some massive quantity in this land, and we just have to go over and find it. And this was a big draw. And Cortés was not immune from that. So he launched essentially his own little expedition, disobeying orders from his superior back in Hispaniola. His boss told him, okay, don't do that. Don't go over and start penetrating into Mexico. Don't go chasing the Aztecs. You just stay in line. And Cortés just listened to him, said, okay, I'm going to go now. And he just completely ignored him. And what we have in his second letter, or he wrote a series of reports. They're not really letters, but a series of reports back to the court, to the royal court in Spain, reporting back on what he had found and what he had seen and what he had done. And it's an interesting example of the perspective of the conquerors as they're moving into this native land. It's a very interesting example of the Renaissance mind put into action, quite frankly. And it's just really interesting to read these accounts of people seeing something that, was completely foreign to them. They are, in their mind, the most sophisticated people, in Europe. They are very wealthy. They are very educated. They are the most highly evolved people ever, and they are coming upon this very different civilization that they view as barbarians, that they view as almost animals. With Cortés, however, he was coming upon not necessarily barbarians. With Cortés, he was coming across eventually the Aztec civilization, which was a very rich and developed civilization, and that creates some curiosities that it's just really interesting to dig through, because it was on a similar level of civilization, but it was very different. And seeing how he attacks that, and seeing the political angles with which he reports back what he notices, what he characterizes his discoveries as, all of his information back is very deliberate. He's not just, writing about what he saw on his summer vacation. Everything that he's reporting back has a purpose and a particular focus. And it is fun to read. One of the earliest parts of it, like just on the second page or so, where'd this go, is a curious little passage. It's on page 2, but it's not in the Norton Anthology, where he has to address the elephant in the room, which is his disobedience, his essentially ignoring of orders. Which in a highly hierarchical organization like a royal court or any military expedition, disobedience is a very serious charge. So he needs to address that right off the bat, and he writes to the king, which is really just the entire royal court. He writes, "I informed your majesty, I believe, in my former dispatch, that some of those persons that accompanied me, who had been servants and friends of Diego Velasquez, who is Cortés's chief rival, his former boss, were jealous of what I had accomplished in the service of your highness, and even sought to create disaffection in our ranks and compel me to abandon the country." So he is characterizing other people reporting back that said, yeah, Cortés just ignored orders. He just disobeyed orders and went off and did his own thing. That's insubordination. That's disobeying an order. That's, well, what do we do for that? Well, we usually kill the people for that. That's something that gets you shot in the military. He's not officially in the military, but, he needs to address that right away. So right there, he's signaling that this is a political document, that whatever he is writing is for a very particular political consideration. And once you understand that, then you treat him a little differently. You're not automatically buying into, okay, this is just him going, and okay, he's like a he's like an academic. He's like he's going there and he's writing a report about what he found, and this is a fair, objective report. No, he's putting you on notice with this little thing here. This is meant to have an effect. This is not just a dispassionate, objective, academic study of a faraway civilization. This report is purposeful, and it is self-interested. He is not objective at all. Some of the notes are sort of interesting, just by little quirks that might jump out at you, and always zero in on anything that seems weird. just in the part that's listed in the anthology, he's very concerned with roads, it seems, and the infrastructure, roads and bridges. On the following day I set out again. After half a mile, entered upon a causeway which crosses the middle of the lake, arriving finally at the great city of Tenochtitlan. I apologize for pronunciation. This is the capital of the Aztec, essentially the capital of the Aztec civilization. It's supposedly located somewhere near Mexico City, which is situated at its center. This causeway was as broad as 2 lances and very stoutly made, such that 8 horsemen could ride along it abreast. And in these 2 leagues, either on the one hand or the other, we met with 3 cities, all containing very fine buildings and towers, especially the houses of the chief men, and the mosques and little temples in which they keep their idols. He is just walking through and narrating what he is seeing. And as he is entering into the cities, entering into the populated areas, this is what he sees. He sees the road. He sees the buildings. And that could be taken as simple objective reporting. But notice what he is reporting on and how he's reporting it. Roads are very important. He mentions roads again and again and again throughout this section. The military advantages of roads are obvious. Roads help you move large groups of people from here to there. If you want to conquer territory, you need roads. Infrastructure is military. He is reporting on all this stuff and saying, we can move, is the implication. We can move an army up that road. The causeway was as broad as 2 lances. Lances are big, long spears. So he's already categorizing this in military terms. And very stoutly made, such that 8 horsemen could ride along it abreast. Horsemen, cavalry, soldiers. He is hinting to the royal court back home in Spain that this could be conquered. We can do this. So he is tantalizing the court with these little details. But notice what he particularizes within that, especially the houses of the chief men and the mosques. Now, 2 things to point out, which is curious, especially the houses of the chief men and mosques. Why that? Are those really the most notable buildings? First of all, the word mosques should jump out at you. There were no Muslims in the Americas in the early 1500s. There just weren't. People would just say, well, any foreign house of worship would be considered a mosque. But it is also meant as a kind of pejorative. Because remember, this is Spain after having expelled the Muslims, expelled Muslim rule. So by saying, yeah, all these people, I think they're really Muslims, that is coded as an insult and is baiting the very Catholic monarch in Spain, that these people should be conquered, these people should be converted, these people should be enlisted in the ranks of good Christian soldiers everywhere. But also the houses of the chief men. Now, sure, the chief men would probably have better houses, larger houses, more noticeable and impressive houses than the ordinary people. But why mention them just so specifically? And as you go through this book, you see a lot of references to the chief men, to the aristocracy. The nobles get a lot of shout outs here. Just notice that repetition of the word nobles, nobles, nobles. Well, who is Cortés writing to here? The court of Spain. Nobles, aristocrats, signaling to them that this is naturally where we should be. This is not just, a bunch of people wallowing around in the mud. This is a very sophisticated, very elevated, very civilized group of people. And we have nobles, they have nobles, we'll fit right in. But also signaling that these people are used to nobles. A lot of the reports back from Columbus played more into the noble savage characterization of people, where they were all just very poor, and Columbus is emphasizing that, well, they're good workers, potential slaves. Here we are saying no, they have an aristocracy, they have nobles, they have a developed civilization, and hence wealth. We want that. So every little detail that Cortés is dangling out there is keying in on these particular points. He's not doing this willy-nilly. Yes, he is basically effectively a military person, and he's noting all of the points that would be of some strategic or tactical use in conquering a city. This is what a military person would notice to begin with, but he's also reporting back these very particular details that are meant to entice and persuade support for his mission. Because remember, his boss, Velasquez, is still essentially his boss, and is very hostile to Cortés right now. He's in trouble with the big boss. So Cortés is going over Velasquez's head and reporting back to the king and queen. And that's a delicate dance to do, as I think anybody can imagine. One of the more interesting details is also the description of the markets. There's a detailed description of the Tenochtitlan marketplace, and he's cataloging all of these different items that are up for sale, that are available at the marketplace, different foods, different products, a vast market, quite frankly, open market. And all of this is curious as you're going through. And sure, when you're walking through a city, particularly a city that you are new to, you come across a marketplace, and it's out in the public, and it's something there's a lot of activity, so it attracts your attention, and you go and you notice it, and you take you remember things about it. But why so much? That is a very long stretch of this report. All of the marketplace goods. More indication that there is wealth here. More indication that there is civilization here. This is a sign of also a developed economy, where it's not just a subsistence economy of people with, people living in a hut with a small garden out back, and maybe they go hunting for meat every day or two, and just, eking out enough of a living to get by. This is people with surplus. This is people with capital to spend, and that creates opportunities in an emerging capitalist economy like Europe of these ages, where they are getting away from the feudal system of just strictly agriculture and subsistence farming, essentially. The king and the queen would be very interested that, those people aren't just a source for raw materials, but maybe we can sell them stuff too. Or maybe all of that economic activity that is going on there, we can tax. We can get an awful lot more out of them. This is marketplace. This is market economics. This is large scale macroeconomics, where they're not just looking to go in and say, okay, we need trees to build ships, so we're going to take a lot of your trees and cut it up into lumber. This is a much more sophisticated and much more potentially lucrative opportunity that Cortés is waving out there in front of people. Throughout, what I think is most striking is the notion of the report itself, where he really does spend some time reporting on the culture of the people, always with that dual motivation of dangling some incentives out there for the king and queen, but also for recording what is going on there. And here you get an interesting aspect of the Renaissance itself, where the emphasis on reason and humanism inherent in the Renaissance, where people are focusing on learning about human life, the life on Earth, and not focusing so much on the afterlife, and just saying, well, everything here is just supposed to be terrible and confusing, but let's just keep our eyes on the prize. When we die, we're going to go to heaven and be with God, and that's all that really matters, and it's just about waiting out until then. The Renaissance is about looking around and paying attention to this world and studying it because it has inherent value. And the report bears that out. Cortés is focusing and studying on these human beings and this human culture that is remarkable in many ways, but is an aspect of human society, and thus deserving of study. This ethnographic, which would be the SAT word there for it, this ethnographic impetus is to learn, to exercise your reason, to learn about the world around you. And there is a particular thread of the Renaissance that we see in great emphasis throughout the age of exploration, where it is motivated by money. It is motivated by financial concerns. It is motivated by nationalistic concerns, but it is also motivated by that simple curiosity about humanity and culture on this earth, where people are encouraged to go find out what other human beings, however racist the categorization of them might be, what other human beings think of one another, or what other human beings do that is different from one another. That is a core element of the Renaissance. Now, you're asking, what was the necklace exchange about? All of this is significant. The necklace exchange between, I'm assuming that means the discussions between Cortés and Montezuma. Montezuma is the great Aztec leader, and Cortés is being brought up to meet him. And what's remarkable about that, and the necklace exchange is part of that, is how is the pomp and circumstance of it, the ceremony. You don't have to understand a lot of the context to understand that, well, this isn't just a guy with an army coming up on a bunch of other people and saying, all right, we're in charge now, you work for us. This is a negotiation. This is diplomacy. Quite frankly, even in conquering, they are approaching Montezuma as a kind of embassy, a diplomatic envoy to go negotiate a kind of deal with him. And you have all of these little stations along the way where they get brought in, and they get greeted by one large group of people, again nobles, and then they get brought up to another thing, and then it ascends slowly through a hierarchy to meeting the big guy, Montezuma himself. And then you have this one guy, Cortés, at the head of a large group of people, and this other guy, Montezuma, at the head of this much larger group of people, but one who is not as powerful right now because they don't have guns. And they are meeting one-on-one as a kind of negotiation, a kind of meeting of allies almost at this point, or a surrender, however you want to put it. And it bears the marks of ceremony, because whenever you have kings and queens or royal aristocrats in any form meeting in momentous and historic occasion, you have ceremony, and that simple exchange of gifts, exchange of pleasantries, greetings, whatever, is all very formal. And here Cortés is, I think, again waving that flag at the Spanish back home, saying, look, these are not just a bunch of people living in huts. These are sophisticated people. This is a wealthy, civilized society, and we need to invest in managing that, in seizing that, in exploiting that. And you just need, since I'm already here and I've done so much, you need to empower me, not make me go work for Velasquez again. Send me more resources, send me more men, more ships, more guns, more money, and I can seize all of this for you. So yeah, it is odd when you're seeing, all right, I get it. They're going in their meeting. They're going to have a little chat. But why is it so drawn out? Why is it so slow? Why is Cortés narrating all of these little details? Can't he just said, yeah, I met the big guy and he's cool. We're in charge now. That's all he has to say realistically. But by stressing the details, by stressing particular details about how sophisticated this civilization is, he's able to make the point that he really needs to make, that this is not just any other little group of people. This is what is distinct, what Columbus failed to find. This is a great civilization. The Aztecs are El Dorado for us. And we have the opportunity to do that. I have the opportunity to exceed Columbus. I have given this, or I have gotten this, accomplished this for you, Your Majesties, Isabella and Ferdinand. Now you need to reward me for that.